It is a great honor and privilege to introduce Paulette Fuchs. You were born in Antwerp, and you were known then as Pauline Ruth Mauer Rector Asubel.
Ausubel.
Can you tell us, and here we're in your beautiful home here in Glassman, and Paulette, I'm so grateful to you. Can you tell us a little bit about your family and your history and how you eventually came to Israel and how you survived the Shoah?
I was very lucky to survive the Shoah. I was born in 1940. It was still nice times, but things were brewing in Europe. I was born in Antwerp. My father was a cleaver at the diamond boss in Antwerp, and my mother was at home. She was from Poland, came to Antwerp in 1935. My father also came to Antwerp in these years, I don't remember exactly. He came from Germany, from Düsseldorf, where my grandfather, his father, was a shochet. He was a shochet for all the little towns around Düsseldorf. He wasn't only a shochet, he was also a rabbi. He was giving children lessons for their bar mitzvah. He was traveling a lot, and there were 5 children. My father had a brother before him, and then one after him, and they were called Raphael. My father was Shaya, Yeshua. Then came Willy, and then came Rosa. And at the end was Bubi. He was called Bubi, and I just now don't remember his...
Paulette, we have a picture of your Zayda,
Yeah, my grandfather. Yechiel Moach, he was his name. Yeah, Yechiel, no, his name was Israel Meir.
Israel Meir. And were they living in Düsseldorf as well?
They were living in Düsseldorf, and my grandfather had a heart attack in Düsseldorf, and he was buried there. And my grandmother stayed alone with 5 children, yes.
And this is a picture of your grandmother.
My grandmother had a brother in Antwerp and and 2 sisters in Antwerp, and the family in Antwerp decided that they would take the family, my grandmother and the children, to Antwerp. They wouldn't let her be alone in Düsseldorf. So they came to Antwerp, the whole family came. The family, my grandmother's sister-in-law and her sisters decided they would take care of the family, would find them lodgings and give the boys some, they would teach them some profession so they could earn some money. And the smaller children, my aunt and my youngest uncle, were put in school. So they looked after them, and they settled in Antwerp. My father and his brothers learned all what you can learn from diamonds, how to cleave, how to all the trades in diamonds. The family found them some teachers, and so they all worked. The eldest brother, Raphael, that's the brother before my father, he was a painter in his heart. He was an artist. He was an artist, and
these are the paintings?
He went, my grandfather probably, which I didn't know him, understood that this son of his was really an artist, and he went to schools, painting and drawing schools in Germany already, because that's what he wanted to be. And my grandfather probably, I haven't known him, but I understand from what was told about him that he liked all the fine things in life, good music, art, even though being a shochet and which probably wasn't his style at all, but he sent his children, that was told to me, he sent his children to matinees of the orchestra in Düsseldorf, so they would hear good music. And he liked the good things in life. My father, my mother told me that he liked Wagner. And she had to go and listen to Wagner because my father liked that. But that was from my grandfather. So my uncle, Raphael, he became a painter, and he wouldn't go to the diamonds. He didn't want to learn diamonds, but he had to, because the family decided. So he did, but he also went to, they were very nice. They helped him go to a special art school in Brussels. So he got both. The youngest brother, he was a violinist. He was a child when he arrived, and he played already the violin. And he was also sent to conservatorium so he could play. So the family was very nice to my grandmother, because the children were looked after and the family could go on. My father, they all they were socialists, all the children were socialists there, they all went to Shomer HaTzair. So that's how they came to Antwerp. My mother a little bit before that, they arrived from Krakow to Antwerp. My grandfather, my grandmother, four brothers, four brothers and my mother.
So here's a picture of your...
That's my grandfather mother's side and my grandmother mother's side. My grandfather was a furrier. He dealt in how you call it?
Pelts and furs.
No, God.
Furs and for pelts and coats and...
Yeah, yes, that's what he did. The story goes that he was the son of a rich family in Poland, who had they had earth. They had a chava. How do you call it? Chava is a farm, a big farm with lots, quite a big. I don't know how big, but quite big because they were apparently rich. And so my grandfather, they used to say that he was brought up like a prince.
But you know, Paulette, if you look at your grandfather and your grandmother, they are extremely well dressed, and you can see very like aristocrats.
And they said my grandmother
with the top hat,
and my grandmother was also from a rich family. They also had a chava, and the shidduch was big. My grandfather sold them. I don't know what. That was my great-grandfather used to travel between the chavot, between the farms, and sell, I think, fodder, yes. So he came to that farm where my grandmother was, and he saw her, and she was beautiful, and he said, "She's from my son."
That's wonderful.
And that's how the shidduch. Yes, my grandmother, and she was like, and that's my mother. She was like a princess because they were probably quite rich. I know they were.
And this is in Krakow?
No, they were in a place called near the Czechoslovakian border. My grandfather was from Auschwitz. That's where he was born.
They had a show. It was a town.
It was a town, and I looked up the town from when it was, and you can see a whole quarter who say it's called the Hutterers' housing, which means that there were a lot of them living there from my grandfather's family in Auschwitz. They came all from Auschwitz. All the Hutterers.
It's still there today.
Yeah. So the two of them were like prince and princess, didn't know anything from life, got married and made 5 children. That's how it went. And those children, boys, 2 girls, they since their parents were so young and so princes, they didn't really know how to educate children. And so they grew up how they grew up. They all loved football, the boys. And yes.
So you got a picture of them.
Yes. And that's what they loved. The boys loved football.
This is a picture taken in 1936.
Yeah.
And this was in Belgium?
This is in Belgium, yes. But they were at football since small. Even my grandfather liked the football. He liked to look at the matches that they when they played football, and so they didn't have anything, no profession, nothing. They didn't know. And when the boys grew a little bit, they understood that it couldn't be like that. You had to earn some money. They found out that in Lyon, in France, you could learn to be a furrier for free if you worked there. You could come and learn how to be a furrier. So one by one, they went to Lyon, and all of them learned how to be furriers. So they came back to Krakow, to my grandfather, and they told him, look, it's no good here, and it's not a good idea to stay here. We heard that in Antwerp is a good place for Jews, because there's a nice keilah and you can have a good life. So what we propose is that we'll make a factory, a fur factory. You'll be the director and we will work. So they all went to Antwerp and they created this fur factory.
It's amazing.
And so my grandfather was the one selling the wares, coats, whatever. And so they lived a good life in Antwerp. I even found the flat where they lived, and I must say I was amazed. It was in a nice house. There was a lift. There was I could see the flat. There was a a bathroom, and it was modern. There was a lift in the house, yes, and they had a good life there.
Paulette, you have a picture of your parents in Hashomer Tzair.
Yes.
And this is from 1935.
Yes, so they came a little bit earlier. Maybe I make a mistake on the years.
So your father is with the glasses?
Yes.
And your mother?
And my mother next to him.
And they all look very happy. They all look...
Yeah, the Shomer HaTzair was the main Jewish organization. All the young people were, a lot of them were in Shomer HaTzair because it was the trend that all the Jews were socialists, and that the idea of socialism was very strong, and they belonged.
So, Paulette, you have also a picture of your parents when they were engaged in 1936.
Yeah, so they came probably to Antwerp in 33, not 35.
And
it must be. Yeah.
Your parents got married in 37.
Yes.
So here's such a beautiful picture of when they got married, and your father was wearing a top hat.
Yeah.
You can see.
Yeah.
And they got married. Did they get married in Antwerp?
Yes. They got married in Antwerp.
Do you know which shul that was in?
Probably because my grandfather was, I know his place in shul, so it must be in the shul where he was, Van der Nestlai. Van der Nestlai.
And here's your father in the diamond trade.
Yes, yes. He was... It's funny because he had a very, very good name. What he did, his job was to give the first knock on the stone to get out the best or the biggest. And if you give the right knock, you get out the best. So, so he was known that he had this geometric eye, and he knew how to do it. So he had a very good name. That's in the trade.
You have a picture of your father from 1941.
Yeah, that was just before he left.
And you were born in 1940?
Yes. So I knew him 1 year.
Did your parents speak to you? Where were you born? If you were in the hospital or...
Yes, my mother told me where I was born. I was born in a clinic, private clinic, because there you could have kosher food in Antwerp. I even know where it is. I went by to look at it.
It still exists?
Yeah, but it's not a clinic anymore. It's just a house. but it's the Bria Montley. I know exactly the address. And I was born Shushan Purim, and my mother was at her parents' and walking home to her flat, and she had tummy ache, and she thought it was from the food from the Seudah, but it wasn't. And so I was born Shushan Purim. Yeah. In this clinic, she knew she had to go to this clinic, normal. It was all normal. My father came. It was no problem, and we still lived a normal life. In 40, when I was born, when I was born in March, was still. It was brewing, but you lived a normal life. And then it started with the German invading Belgium and deciding on what to do with the Jews in Belgium. And in Antwerp was easy because they were cluttered around the diamond trade. So they put how do you call it?
Like decrees, they made
decrees saying that all the young men from age 10 to 40 or something like that. I don't remember how much, what the age were, but they had to come such and such day to the train station, and they had to come without anybody taking them. And if they came to help, now that the Germans were the masters, they had to help in the war, work for the war. And if they came without anybody taking them, nothing would be done to the families. And not only that they worked for the Germans normally, and they would be paid for their work. And my father, being brought up in Germany was the best he ever knew. And he told my mother, if they say so, it's true, because they're Germans and Germans don't lie. And my mother said, no, you are wrong. You are wrong. My mother was Polish, and she didn't believe. And she told him, don't go. Don't go. You don't know what's going to happen. Don't go. And he said he would go anyway. So he left. Left others. There were more than 1,000 men who went to this train station. And they were sent to the north of France, where they had to work on the roads, on building. There was a project that the Germans had. They wanted to build something against the English, and a fort or whatever. Difficult work with earth, with stones, with all these men were in diamonds. They were no good for that. So after a month or two, they were sent back to Belgium, to a place called Mechelen. In Mechelen, it was a camp. It was a military camp, Adain. I was there in the museum, and there were trains waiting for them. But They didn't go immediately. Mechelen is only half an hour from Antwerp, a little bit more. And he couldn't even, there was no way he could talk to my mother. And he was in Mechelen, and then he was trained for his they were sending by group people to Auschwitz by train. The trains used to come there and take them to Auschwitz. Some men jumped even from the train. If the train was a little bit slow, they were young men, they tried to escape, but my father wasn't sporty and he didn't try. So I don't know exactly, we don't know exactly when, if he arrived in Auschwitz. Probably yes, and he died from what they got there in Auschwitz.
Typhus?
Yes, typhus. And there's all kinds of stories around that. My mother knew that he died in Auschwitz.
When did she know?
After the war.
Only after the war?
Yeah, sure. Because when he went to France, meanwhile we were in Antwerp, and Antwerp was, there was a lot of fighting. And Jews were also, they took Jews right, left and center, wherever. And there's even a story my mother told me that it was half normal in Antwerp. So she went into town with me in a pram, and she went into one of the big stores, and I was with her in the pram. And then suddenly they said on the microphone that everybody had to show their identity card, because there was they were looking, the police was coming in. So my mother went to the toilets with the pram, said to the lady, because in Antwerp even now there's a lady there who cleans the toilets, and she said to this lady, "Please tell them that you are the grandmother of this child." And she left. And she left me with the lady. The lady said she was a Flemish lady. And she, when it was finished, when they left, my mother got through. She came to fetch me, and we went home. When I got married in Antwerp, my mother looked up the lady, and she was at my wedding.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you remember her name?
No.
But what an amazing story.
Yeah. I was saved a few times from death like that. From really, I was looked after. That was in Antwerp. But why I'm saying that, my mother couldn't believe that my father wasn't coming back or showing or telling her where he was. She couldn't believe it. And so she decided to find out where he was. She took me, and we went to France. She went to France in the middle of everything.
To try
to find my father. And so we landed in Paris. Meanwhile, my grandparents' mother's side was sent by their boys, their sons, to France, to a place called Chambéry, which was Free France, so-called. So, but my mother went to Paris. and decided that she would put me in a place where other children were, like paying for my stay in a family. She would ask if they could look after me. And there was, outside of Paris was a place, and they had already 6 children, and my mother thought, well, they know how to look after children. She left me there. And because she said, she thought that if alone she could find my father. When she came back after a month, or maybe less, she found out that I couldn't walk anymore. I was already a child because I never ate. They used to put the food in the middle of the table, and she saw that. And every child, and the children around, and every child who grabbed food had food, and who couldn't, didn't. So she saw that. I was the smallest, so she took me from there, and she went into Paris. But it was Paris, and I was sick. I had whooping cough. So she thought what to do with it. It was dangerous to walk in Paris with a pram. And so she went to a Jewish orphanage in Paris, outside of Paris. And she went to the director, and the director, she said, I would like to leave my child here because it's the war. And the director said, I'm very sorry, but there are many children here, and your child is sick, and others will get, I can't have her. Which was my, to jump very far. After the war, my mother met this director, and he asked where I was. He remembered my mother, and then they spoke, and my mother said I was in Switzerland, and he said how lucky she was, because the next day the Nazis came and took all the children.
Another miracle.
Yeah.
If he would have taken you, we wouldn't be here today.
No. So I'm just saying. I'm saying that if your destiny is to live, you go through all these things, and you are looked after somehow. So my mother.
With this picture.
That's in Lyon. My mother also went to Lyon, because in Lyon she thought she would find my father there.
And how old are you in this picture?
2.5, 3.
So she went to Lyon as well?
Yes, I went with her.
But she must have been such a courageous woman.
She was.
It's German occupied France.
Yeah, but in Lyon was what do you call it? The French underground was all around Lyon, and she knew that in Lyon she could have another identity card, false identity card. That's the one she was incarcerated with. When I got the answer from Klarsfeld, I wanted to know where my mother had been, because she never told me. And so he said she was in Auschwitz, and there was a place where they said there were no women. And he said it's not true, and he found all the papers, and my mother's name was there, her false name. So my mother when she couldn't find my father, she decided that she couldn't walk around with that baby, and she brought me to my grandparents in Chambéry. And so I went to Chambéry, which I liked very much.
Do you still have recollections?
Yes.
Is this one of
Chambéry, I remember exactly.
Is this one of your first recollections?
Yes.
So what do you remember?
I remember we lived in a house, behind the house. There was a concierge, and in each room there was a family. In each room. Generally elderly people, Jewish, each room. And I remember myself going on the steps, going into the rooms and saying hello to the people in each room. They were like grandparents. And also I stayed with my grandmother and grandfather, and my grandmother, there wasn't much to eat, so my grandmother used to make potato soup. And she used to feed me with the potato soup, and I remember the taste. There's no taste like that. I always look for that taste, but I don't know how to do it. And that's one of my recollections. And I didn't have any toys. And I looked down from the window. Downstairs were children from the concierge. They were playing downstairs. The little boy had a car, and the little girl had dolls. And I didn't have any. So, and then I heard that the concierge said, children, come home, eat for 4 o'clock, goûter. So I saw them going, leaving all the toys in the middle of the downstairs. Nobody looked after me, so I went downstairs, grabbed the doll, and went upstairs with the doll. And I knew I shouldn't have done that. I knew that. I was about 3. So I put the doll under the mattress of the bed. There was one bed in the room. I put the doll under the mattress of the bed. And then the concierge came out, and she screamed, "Somebody stole a doll from my daughter. Somebody there said this," and all the Jews, and it was not. I think everybody was scared. She was screaming, and my mother was there. Somehow she was there that day, and she looked at me, and she said, "You took the doll." I didn't say anything, and she said, "Tell me, you took the doll." I didn't say anything. She said, "I will find it." And where could she find it? She went under the mattress, found the doll, and she went downstairs, said, "Slicha," said, "I'm sorry, it won't happen again, it's a little girl." That was it. Then she came upstairs and she said, "You could have brought a terrible thing over us. Don't ever do such a thing again. Don't ever." That I remember exactly. I can draw it. And so that's one of my very first recollections, real recollections. There are some that maybe we spoke about, but this is real. This is a real recollection. And then my mother, who was a very energetic person, decided, not her alone, also I think one of my uncles was also there in the region, and my mother's sister, who was not far away, who with her husband and 2 daughters, who they already had sent with the Red Cross to Switzerland. There was a thing at the moment that they would give holidays for children in France, Catholic children, Catholic or Christian children, a month's holidays in Switzerland so they wouldn't be in the war all the time, and then they would get home again. It was like a holiday. And my aunt, but only Christian children, bought the girls, two twins, crosses, and she made them go to church to sit and to pray with the other children. And they were twins. One is still alive. And they were twins. And the one twin told me that the other one, she was like a good girl. She was always doing what the parents said to do. And the mother said, you never say that you are Jewish, you wear this cross, and etc. And she wasn't exactly the one that used to do. So her sister asked, they all pray, what do we do? So she said, you say Shema Israel, nobody will hear you. So that's what she told me. And so they went with the Red Cross over to Switzerland, and the Red Cross immediately found families for all these children. And they knew that they were Jewish children. They said they were Jewish children, and so they were sent to a Jewish family in Bern. And so they stayed there. They have their own story. One is still alive. I'm not going into that, but that's where they say she was such a good girl that she wouldn't take off her cross because her parents said she had to wear the cross. Until the mother of this family said, I can't have a child with a cross, I want a Jewish child. So they took off. She said, if you don't want to take off the cross, you'll have to go back from where you came. So she took off the cross. Yes, and so they were in Switzerland, and my aunt came to her parents, and my mother my mother said that even Chambéry wasn't secure anymore, and the parents, she had to find a way so we could go over the border to Switzerland. Chambéry is really near Switzerland. And my mother found a man who, for money, he was ready to take us over the border, over the mountain. It was over the mountain to Switzerland. And so we went at night.
And do you remember this?
I remember part of the going, but I know how it happened. And so we went at night, and I was in the arms of my aunt, my mother's sister, and arriving at where this guy was waiting for us, my mother said, I'm going back. There are more Jewish families in this house. If it goes well with all of you, I will do it with the other families. So we went, and my mother took the train back to Chambéry. It was on the train. And what she told me was that arriving in Chambéry at the train station, she felt that somebody was following her. She felt it immediately, but she had nowhere to go, only to the place where she used to live before. So she went, and she went into the room. They were waiting for her in the room, and my mother, being very young and foolish, they said to her, "Where are your parents? Where is your child?" They knew exactly. "And your sister?" And my mother said, "You have me, but you'll never have the others. My family is safe." And so she got, they gave her left and right, and she said she was injured, and they took her into prison in Chambéry.
Was it the French or the German that did this?
I guess, I don't know, she never said that. She only knew that she was in a French prison in Chambéry.
So it could have been the French?
Could have been. And so she was in Chambéry for 3 months in prison. She said they were okay in that prison. Nobody hurt them.
Just because she was Jewish?
Ah, yeah, sure. And after 3 months, she said the guardian, the soldier who was guarding the prison, came in, and he said he was sad. She said he was sad. And he said, "My little lady, I'm very sorry, but tomorrow morning you are leaving." Which she knew what it meant. If she was leaving, she was leaving to Drancy. Everybody knew that. So the next morning she was sent to Drancy, and from Drancy to Auschwitz.
And this is from the French police station?
Yeah,
she was
from the prison.
Drancy, from the prison.
And at a certain moment, there was one of the lawyers in France wanted to intend against the French train company, and they told me I should bring all the papers also. So I wrote to Chambéry to ask them for that they should give me some papers that my mother was there in prison. And the answer was everything was burnt. Which may be true, maybe not, who knows. So never, there was never anything. And then there was a process, how do you say, they went against the French railways, and they lost because they said they couldn't do anything about it because they were under the Nazis. So that was it with that.
I think only recently the French government have apologized for, but it was only very recently.
Yeah, no. And now France is so anti-Semitic. It's unbelievable, unbelievable. I lived in France, and my schooling was in France. I loved it. I loved France. French is my best language, and French literature, French, everything is that I know from, because that's my basic language. Well, anyway, that's how we came to Switzerland, by Geneva in a refugee camp with my grandparents and my aunt.
And you remember arriving in Switzerland? You remember?
No. The only thing is that I remember that when we walked, my aunt had her hand on my mouth, and she said, "Shh, shh, 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 shake it." Yeah, not shake it. She said, "Don't cry, don't talk, shh." She was afraid. I was small. She was afraid, and I remembered the dogs looking for us. because the Germans were after us. The dogs, and I was scared of dogs many years. I was so scared. And we arrived in this refugee camp, and I don't remember exactly. I remember some feelings, but not. And not long ago I found the letter my grandfather sent to the Red Cross, asking that they should find a family for me. Which is, I thought it was, and my aunt and my grandfather spoke to the people from the Red Cross. And what is funny, I mean, not funny, but very telling, is that what they asked for is a family who will love the child. They didn't say a Jewish family. And they were religious. My grandfather was very religious, and my aunt was very religious. They didn't ask for a Jewish family. They just asked for a good family. And I found the letter my grandfather wrote, and I saw that he wrote very good German, had a very nice handwriting, which means that he went to school. But the Austrians had taken Poland, so he went to school, so he knew German, and that was part. If people said that he didn't know anything, he did. Yeah, I know, I saw the letter. Yeah, he was a little prince, that's why probably. Yes, and so I was in the camp. I don't remember the camp at all. But I remember the day my aunt said to me, there's a lady who will come and take you away to a nice family where you will be, they will love you. This lady is very nice, you have to go with her. I never cried. I don't remember ever crying. I knew I had to do it, so I went.
Did you ever ask, is your mother coming back, or what's happened to your mother?
Not really. No. I just took in whatever was coming. I was a child like that. I just, whatever was there, I had to deal with it. It's probably part genetic from my mother. I just had to deal with the situation, and I did. I don't remember crying. I wasn't a crying child. And I arrived in Kur, where I got to the family. That's the family. 23 of December. I arrived in Kur, which is the town where this family was, family Brücker. The mother of this family, her name was Martha, she had said to her children, it's Christmas time, I don't want any presents this Christmas from anybody. I don't want if you want to bring me a present, give me a present. I want a child from a child that is in a refugee camp, a boy or a girl. I just want a child to look after, to give warmth and love. And this Gretli, this one of the daughters, she was working for Caritas. Caritas is the Catholic side of the Red Cross. It's called Caritas. And she was working for Caritas. They're very Catholic family. And she had a friend who worked for the Red Cross, and she told her friend, I don't know what to do. My mother wants for Christmas, imagine what my mother wants. She wants a child as a present for Christmas. And her friend said, oh, that's very good. We are looking for a family. Here is a Jewish child, a Jewish girl, and she needs a family desperately. So you have your present. And Gritli said, but what are we doing with a Jewish child? How are we going to educate her? How are we going to see what to do with her? So her friend said, your mother will know exactly what to do. And that was it. So I came to Kur. And it was 23rd of December.
And this is 1940?
43.
43?
Yes.
And this is?
This is me.
This is in Switzerland?
Yes.
But Paulette, I have to ask you, why did your aunt and your grandparents not want you to go to a Jewish family?
They didn't even mention it. They didn't mention. They just said the family. I think, after thinking again and again, I think that it was obvious, being Jewish, that they would look for a Jewish family. That's why they didn't write a Jewish family. I don't think they didn't want me to go to a Jewish family, definitely not. For them it was a problem because they were kosher, they were dati, it was a problem that I was in a Catholic family. So I think it's only that. It's that they just didn't think that it would...
Maybe they just took it for granted.
Yes, I think so, yes. Because afterwards it was problematic for them visiting me. What my aunt did was that when we went over the border and into that refugee camp, she said she was my mother, not my aunt. And she had already 2 daughters in Switzerland, so she said that's my 3rd daughter.
And her 2 daughters in Switzerland were the Jewish family?
Yes, both of them. But I wasn't. She said she was my mother and she had the right to visit me. So one day my war mother said, oh, your mother is coming to visit. Let's go to the train station to fetch her. So we went, and out came my Aunt Rachel. And I said, that's not my mother, that's Aunt Rachel. And my war mother, Martha, said, she told me that later, I don't remember that, she told me, and she said, I did as if I hadn't heard anything.
Wait, so Paulette, I have to ask you, did they speak German, the
Yes.
family? So,
Yes.
And you spoke German as well?
No, I spoke French.
Not at all, no German?
No, I came into the family, I spoke French.
Could they understand French?
Yes. They were very, the father was a lawyer, the mother had a very good education in private schools, and she spoke French and Italian.
And at home, what did you speak as a baby? Or what was the first language you learned?
German. My father spoke German to me.
So could you understand?
And my mother too.
Could you understand a bit of German?
No. I don't remember. When I arrived there in the flat, first of all, I arrived in something I never saw. Oh, what could I see? But it was a very big flat. It was 5 people were waiting for me, and I went up in a lift, which I never had seen, and everybody was looking at me. And this war mother, Martha, took me in her arms and spoke to me in French. And I answered, "Oui, madame, non, madame," in French. And she said, "You don't call me madame. You can choose. Call me grandma, auntie, or Ima, or mother." And I said, "I want to call you mother."
Really?
And I always called her mother. As she was. She was a very special person. She was a very believing Catholic. And the beautiful side of Catholicism I learned from her. I only saw the beautiful side. She was perfect. She was a perfect person. She didn't believe, she believed that every person was born in a family, in a surrounding, in a place, and everybody was allowed to keep that. You were not supposed to change people. That's what they had, that's what they were, and they belonged to what they have. And that's how she saw the world. She was against all these people going to Africa and so
the
to change missionary. She was against it.
She didn't want to convert you?
No, not at all. They were Catholic. They were Catholics like you can imagine Jews in Bnei Brak who believe in their rabbi. So they were Catholic believing in their cardinal who lived in the same city. And they were part of his entourage from the cardinal. And the cardinal came Sundays, sometimes Sundays, for lunch with his gabbai. And I remember I was maybe 4, 5, I don't remember the age I was sitting in this city, little girl, I was sitting there, in this city. And I got it as a...
Really? This is the...
That's the one. I was so small that they couldn't see me when I was sitting there. And she was sitting in a settee that was like a throne. Gothic. That's how she sat straight like that. And the cardinal was sitting in another settee. And he said, "Mrs. Brooker, you want to do such good things to that little girl. Bring her to Mother Church." And she sat in the church like this, and she said, I was given a Jewish child, I will give back a Jewish child. Yeah, that's how she was.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah, she was unbelievable. She sent me, they were very Catholic, you know, they were so Catholic. They belong, in Switzerland they have, yeah.
Sure.
In Switzerland they had wars, Protestant Catholics. And in that city, Chur, where I was, there was a cardinal, and a cathedral and a whole part which belonged to the cardinal. Even today it's like that. And they belonged to that. And there were more Protestants in this town than Catholics. And they belonged to the Catholic environment. They gave money to the Kehillah. They were like Jews the same way, in the same vein as Jews being in a Kehillah. So for me, later on, when I came back to be Jewish, or my family, it wasn't strange to me because I knew that's how you behave.
It was a community.
Yes. It was very Catholic. It was very, very Catholic.
And how was her husband, and how was the...
Her husband was an anti-Semite. No, he wasn't, no. He was a lawyer, he didn't like Jews. But that's the norm there. You don't like Jews.
How do you know that he didn't like Jews?
Because he used to, it's another story, that my grandparents were allowed to have a studio instead of being in the refugee camp, they were allowed to have a studio in Zurich, because my grandfather had some family in Zurich, Swiss Jews. And so they had a studio in Zurich, and it was Shavuot, or before Shavuot, and they asked to have me for the Chag with them. My grandfather asked. And so there was a big question. And so they met, the two couples. The two women were friendly immediately.
This is
they had
your
the
grandparents and...
No, my grandmother and this Swiss mother.
Yeah.
The two of them immediately found they were two men didn't spoke to each other, not even hello. My grandfather wasn't better. He said, "Goyim I don't want." He was a Polish Jew, and and my war father, we said, Jews. Men. Yes, that's how they met. And my war mother said to me, "Oh, your grandmother is a real princess," when she was. Yeah, that's how I know how they felt, the two men.
And did you go to the family in Zurich for...
Yes, I did.
Shavuot?
But meanwhile, I loved this mother. This war mother was my whole world. She put me into kindergarten. Where did she put me in kindergarten? Where nuns, she was Catholic. So, but she said to the nun, "In the morning when you pray, this little girl isn't making the cross. And don't ask her to do it." That's part of it. And so it was Shavuot, and wherever she went, I wanted to go with her. I was a little girl, and she was my whole world. And she went a lot to church. She was very frum, very frum. On Sundays, if she didn't get communion because she wasn't feeling well, it was tragedy. The priest had to come and give her mass in the bedroom and give her she was very frum. So she also went afternoon. It's a time when you go afternoon, I think after, I don't remember when it is that you go to Vespers in the afternoon to church. Nobody goes, only very frum people, and she used to go. And because I was always with her and next to her, I want to come with you, I want to come with you. And she thought, she told me later, I don't want to take her to church, and it's not for her. In the end, She said, I thought I can't do any harm. I'm not doing anything against her. She wants to come with me. She should come with me. So I went with her to church, to the cathedral. It's a very nice cathedral, Gothic. And it's very quiet, and she prays there, and I sit there next to her. And so we started, she started to take me whenever she went, so not to leave me alone at home or with the maid. And then came this Shavuot. And so I went to Zurich. And my grandfather said, she comes with me to shul. And my grandfather didn't go to shul. He went to a shtibel. So I went with him. I was about 6.
And your grandmother as well?
My grandmother wasn't feeling well. She was a sick person. So I went with him, opened the door to the shtibel. I was in shock, a complete shock. Everybody shockled and such a loud thing, and everybody prays this way, and they move this way. And I looked, it was awful. It was awful because suddenly I thought, that's me, not the cathedral. That's mine. And it was a big shock. I didn't like it, I must tell you. But then, you know, on Shavuot, they asked the children to come to the bima and they put the talit. So my grandfather too called me up to the bima, and all the children were there, and I was under the talit next to him. And that was it. I accepted. I remember accepting it immediately. That's how it is. That's who I am. That's it.
And Paulette, did you ever ask, why did your family in Zurich not take you?
No, I never asked. I preferred not to.
Did they have their own children?
Yes, sure.
And was there place in their home?
They're very rich people.
That's so hard to understand.
Yeah. It was my grandfather's sister was married to a Swiss family.
And they didn't say, maybe you should now stay here with us in Zurich?
No.
They knew you were going back to a non-Jewish family.
Well, that was my family. That's where I was.
But didn't this upset your grandparents and your aunt?
They couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't. There were some funny parts, like in Switzerland, the Jewish community of Switzerland knew where all the children were, where the families, in what family they were. So Pesach, they used to send matzot to all these families, and the matzot arrived also in Kur to that family. And I gave one bite, and I said, "Ugh," and they loved it. They ate all the matzahs.
Did they send any representative, any rabbi to come see you, or any?
No, but my war mother, Martha, she thought that I had to know who I was. First of all, in the kindergarten, she did that. Then at the table, they always said a prayer before lunch, before you ate. So they changed the prayer so that I could say the prayer. And my prayer was, "Dear God, give food to all the children in the world." That was my prayer. And I used to say it loud. They didn't say Jesus, they never said anything. And Jesus was in every room, and the holy...
With the cross?
Yeah, everything. Even, and I always laughed afterwards. I thought, they had holy water on the side of the door, like a mezuzah. and there was Holy Theresia. She was the holy of the family, and and Christmas and Easter and the whole thing. So I learned to be a Jew through her. What she wanted was that I knew who I was. So she found a rabbi who came to town to give lessons to a boy for his bar mitzvah, a Swiss boy. He came once a week or twice a week, twice a month. No, every week. He came from Davos. He was a refugee. He was in Davos. He was the rabbi there, Rabbi Levi. And she went to him and she said she would like him to give me lessons in Tanakh. It was 4 or 5. And so I went once a week and to teach me Aleph Bet. So I went once a week to Rav Levi to have my lesson, and he gave me Shiurei Bait. And he wrote in Latin letters under the Hebrew what it was, so she could do my homework with me. He wrote in Latin letters, because I couldn't read Latin letters. I wasn't even in school. So I learned Aleph Bet and doing homework with her. I went to Rav Levi, and Rav Levi also, all the children who were in all kinds of families arrived at Rav Levi in Davos for Pesach, for the Seder. And they had buses and took all the children up to there. So I remember 2 Sederim that I went.
And you
there.
went to Davos?
Yes, I went to Davos. It's not far. And also
And how was
Purim.
it when you met the other Jewish children? Did you connect well? Did you make friends?
It wasn't, there was no problem. There was no, first of all, this family being very rich and central of the town wasn't so big then. Today it's a much bigger town. But then the town wasn't so big, and the father was from a village above the town, and he was like, I don't know, he was like a central figure. He had his own, he owned a newspaper. He had his own ideas, and he owned a newspaper. He built a very big house that he rented. The flats were rented out to his friends who had participated in the building of this house. He was known as a political figure in the town, and the town wasn't big, so I was the child that was at them, and I had their, how you say in Hebrew, ahila. I mean, everybody knew that I belonged to them, so nobody would dare say a word against me or do something against me. Nobody dared. They were like royals. They were
like royalties.
Yeah. Nobody would have done anything, and everybody was saying, "Well, she stays there," and they took her, and blah, blah, blah. But we also lived like that in that house. I mean, 12 o'clock, everybody had to stand next to the table at their place. 12 o'clock. You sat in a certain way, you ate in a certain way, and you had to be very well mannered.
So if you look at the picture, you can see everybody is very formal.
Yes, they are. They were. Very formal. Everything was formal.
And how did you get on with the other children? Well, they're not children, but they were
And so, Gritli is the one who brought me, the one sitting on the left. That's Gritli. She brought me to the family.
And was she loving?
No. She broke my heart at the end of her life. I was in Kur when she was already in old age home, and it was a Catholic old age home, and the nuns there said, and I went to visit her. Her brothers and sisters weren't very loving. They didn't hate each other, but they were, I don't know, not they didn't, I don't know if they didn't like her or what, they weren't close. And I was visiting, and one of the nuns said, "Stay." I said, "Yes." "Well, she's not going to wake up tomorrow morning." So I stayed. And I phoned to they phoned to the family, and nobody came. I was alone with her. And she said to me, "It's such a shame you weren't Catholic." That was her. I cried. Yeah. I don't know why she said that. For me, it was very hard to hear. She was a good person. She taught me singing.
Did she get married?
No. She was at Caritas, and Caritas also went with the Red Cross with the Nazis. The Nazis wanted to show them that it was okay with the Jews. So she went also, and she saw, and they weren't allowed to help anybody, only help them get into the trains. And then she heard about what's happened later, after the trains, and she came home. She was engaged to get married, and she stopped everything. She said, "I'm not going to get married and have children who can do things like that." And she was depressed, and they were very afraid that she wouldn't come out of it. So what the psychiatrist said, they had enough intelligence to take a psychiatrist. He said she should have a garden. You have downstairs, you have a piece of land, let her make her a garden, and she should look after the garden. And that's what she did, and I helped her as a child. That's how I know how lettuce grow, and yeah.
And her other sister, was she?
The other sister was the youngest of family, and she was jealous. I never knew as a child that however she was, it was because she was jealous. I took her place at the table.
But she's so much older than you. She was...
No, she was 14 when I came, 14, 15, like that. But I took her place at the table. I was put in between mother and father. That was my place at the table, and that was her place before, because she was the youngest. So she was jealous. She was really jealous. She was jealous, and on the other hand, she felt that that some relation between us. When I had my children and I was sick, she said, "Send me the girls. I'll look after them until you get better." She also said things like, when the children didn't behave somehow, she said, we were different. We were educated in a different way, didn't we? Yes. She was somehow she was closer than the other sister, because she felt we were related somehow, and the other one behaved like she behaved. She had to take me. My war mother made her take me with her on she had created a youth movement for girls, Catholic girls, called the Way, der Weg. They were Catholic, and they saw each other like Tnuat Noir, same way. And in the summer there were summer camps, and in the winter camps. And my war mother used to say, "Take her with you to the winter camp. It will do her such good to the mountains will her do some good. Take her with you." And she didn't like that, I'm sure. She didn't like it. Well, she didn't know what to do with me, because they all went to church, and how could she explain to all the girls who I was and what I was? So it wasn't easy for her, but yeah, that's how it was. I liked it in the winter camp. It was nice. I didn't like the ski, but that was another story.
What was her name?
Gridley, Margaret. But her name was Gridley.
And the other siblings, did they get married?
Yes. Hans, that's the biggest. He was a pharmacist. He studied in Bern. He met his wife in Bern. Yeah, that's him.
One in the middle.
He had a story with the Nazis. Well, before the war. He went to one of the summer camps that they had. The Hitlerjugend had summer camps that were very in the nature and singing and all that. That's how they brought them in. And he went to German. When he came back from the summer camp...
And that was in Germany?
That was in Germany. When he came back from the summer camp, he was hitched. And my war mother told me that they had a terrible time taking it out of him. He and his father, both of them, said, "No, it's not right, you can't, and it's not, no. I think some of it stayed with him, I think. Well, he was never bad to me, or we didn't have much with each other. He was the eldest. He was not bad, but he wasn't very close. The next one, Alois.
He's in the uniform.
Yes, he was a neurosurgeon in the end. Yes, he learned. He was at university. When I came, he was a soldier. And he liked me, and I liked him very much. He was a very likable man, did a lot of, his life became very different from the others. And he always said he was my brother, and always nobody was allowed to touch me. He was like my brother. He was my brother, and he thought I was wonderful, and blah. All our lives. When I was living still in Ranana, I get once a phone call, and he says, "I'm here. I'm in Egypt. I'm coming to Israel. Get me a room in in the King David in Jerusalem." Yeah, very nice, thank you. And he said, "Yes, I'm coming to visit you. Get me a room in the King David in Jerusalem. 2 rooms, actually. No, 2 names. His name and a lady's name, which I didn't know. And she was Jewish. They never married. She was his mistress many years. She was also a neurosurgeon. She was a neurologist. She was a neurologist from a very well-known Jewish family in Zurich. Also a story from Jews and Goyim and da. And she had been in Israel. She had done Aliyah before. She was in Kibbutz Magalim. She knew the whole Memshala. Yeah, he was special. I always had a very, very good. He always said he was my brother. I even have his book where he writes unto my little sister. He written a book.
And Paulette, the boy who's sitting on the right, that was Albert.
Yeah.
And he was the youngest.
He was the youngest. He was before the youngest daughter.
The youngest of the sons.
Yeah.
And did you have a good connection with him?
Yeah, he was a nice man. He was a little bit. He was a very nice man, but he wasn't. He never went to university. He was sick when he was a child and a young man, so he never went to university. But he was very clever. He used to do all the everything his father needed in the house and in accountancy. He was like his director for the business, and he also his father was very clever. He gave each of the children a part of the house and the houses and the heritage while he was still alive. So he got, that's my cousins. He got.
I'm just going to show the picture of Kur.
Kur, yeah.
And these are the. Were these the twins?
He got in the house, this big house, the Retushof. That's the twins, yeah. In the Retushof, there is a picture of the Retushof there. That's the house. Down, it was a big house, and down at the street level were shops and a theater. When he built the house, the father, he put the city, that's the summer house, that's the Retushof. That's where I lived. So and
they had a summer home?
Yeah, in the mountain. Villa Teresia. He put, the father, when he built the house, he put the city theater downstairs. And then it became, when the city theater built another theater more theater. Then he made it into a cinema, and the cinema belonged to Albert. And that's her. Martha.
You can see such a kind, you can see from her face, a very loving, kind person.
Yes, she was. She tried to teach such. She took me. She was like the president of Witzo, yeah, but she was for the Catholic, like a Witzo, but the Catholic one. She was the president, and as a president, she went to the poor part of Switzerland to bring food and sweets to the children, and she took me with her to show me that some children don't have what I have. She took me with her, and she said, "You give the sweets to the children." That was part of her teachings.
It's amazing. How often did your grandparents come and visit you, or your aunt?
Never. My aunt came maybe twice, and it was a problem because she wouldn't eat anything. She wouldn't eat anything.
But could you write to each other, or were you in contact?
Not really. I didn't know how to read and write.
Only trust. And at this time, did you know what had happened to your mother? Or
No.
did you ever ask?
Every night, before I went to sleep, I had to pray for my parents. Every night. Before I went to bed.
Because you didn't know what had happened to your father either.
So I prayed to God they should keep my parents healthy and well and can come back soon to me. Every night.
And that's your... Who this is... She actually still in you.
That's what she wanted me. How she taught me how
She taught you to pray for your parents.
Yes. Well, she was a very special person. She was very. We were very connected. You know, when I left, when my mother came back from Auschwitz, my mother came first time to visit my mother.